morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this morning's Coresight conversation, Legends in Retail. I'm going to kick it off to our CEO and founder, Deborah Weinswig, to start us off.
Great. Thanks so much, Anna. Good morning and welcome to our Legends in Retail series as part of our Coresight conversations. I'm your co-host, Deborah Weinswig, along with senior analyst from Coresight Research, Marie Driscoll. We are very honored to have two special guests today. Mark Cohen, who has a very distinguished background and was most recently chairman and CEO of Sears Canada. Many of us have had the opportunity to spend time with Mark at Columbia University, where he is a professor teaching classes across the entire spectrum of retail, which is a big responsibility these days. In addition, we have my longtime personal friend, Jan Kniffen, whom I've known since my first days as an analyst on Wall Street, where he was the treasurer of May Company and truly a guiding light for many of us analysts. He now has a boutique consulting firm, J. Rogers Kniffen Worldwide, where he espouses words of wisdom that we all need to hear, especially in this environment. In addition, he has a huge heart and works with many startups as they find their footing. And in his spare time, he's a frequent guest on CNBC. Today, we're going to discuss how COVID-19 is affecting the retailers, whom are the winners and losers, the impact on the macro environment, and what does retail really look like when we all get back to work. As always, we will have a transcript and video available on our site, and we will launch poll questions about 5 minutes after the start of the call. Lastly, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen during our conversation if you would like to ask a question. And with that, I'll turn it over to Marie to give us her 2 minutes on the state of retail based on her discussions with industry leaders, and then we'll dive into Q&A with Mark and Jan. Thanks again, everyone.
Thanks, Deborah. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us here today. Talking with industry leaders, people are in limbo. We've seen in the last few weeks retailers, brands furloughing their employees, tapping lines of credit, doing everything they can to improve their liquidity, postponing dividends, postponing interest payments. At the end of the day, what people are really concerned with and what they don't know is, when will this end and when does the consumer come back? The longer this goes on, the more it impairs our economy. We've seen the governmental agencies, the World Economic Forum, project GDP or global GDP down about 3 to 5% for this year. These are unheard of figures, didn't happen in our last recession. So for retailers—
Marie, do you think this is a recession or do you think this is a depression?
Yeah.
I mean, Mark,
I didn't go through a depression, but yeah, this is what I think retailers are thinking about when they look out to back to school and holiday. Jan?
I don't know if it's a depression until we know when we get some sort of palliative that works against this disease. If we get something for this like Tamiflu is for flu, where you get less duration and less sick, we all go back to work. We're not in a depression. If we have to wait 18 months until we have an actual vaccine for this thing, we could easily be in a depression. Right now, I would say sometime early summer or sooner, we're going to have a palliative that works. Every time I hear some person talk on TV from one of the big pharma companies, they've got one they think works. Now the question is, will it get through the test phase and actually be certified as working? But there are several being tested right now. If one of those really works and can be produced at scale, and you don't have to have it as an IV, you can take it as an oral drug, they'll go back to work and we'll have 9 quarters of recovery. They'll be slow and it'll take that long to get back to where we were when we went into this thing, but it won't look like a depression. It'll look like a recovery.
Yeah, the government seems to have put enough things in place and may in fact put in more to support small businesses, big businesses, and the consumer. But in terms of the consumer, there's a fear of health, there's a fear of wealth, there's a fear of their jobs, and this is certainly clouding up their vision regarding any discretionary purchases.
I think when this is all over, and whenever that is, let's say in several years, it's going to receive a definition that's completely unlike anything we've used in the past with regard to recession or depression. This is going to be an event that has its own identity, if you will.
Mhm.
Well, somebody said it to me best. It's like '01 plus '08, and then you throw a pandemic in. And so, right, it truly is, why I think, our government, I mean, it's very challenging. And I mean, Mark, the question that's been on my mind, and I think many of us, now that we're kind of out of the shock and in like the realization phase, who do you think the retail winners and losers are going to be on the other side? We've already seen, some miss their debt payments. What does that mean? And, I'm sure I've heard up to as high as 20 to 30% of inline tenants won't be there when we reopen the malls.
Well, I think it's fair to say, I don't know that anybody would argue, that the retailers who were doing well going into this event and are doing business during this event will come out in tremendously strengthened positions. They've not only been servicing their customers, they've been acquiring new customers literally on a daily basis. The handful of retailers who've been in a pronounced degree of distress going into this event are certainly going to come out in much weakened condition. And some of them appear to be falling by the wayside even as we speak. I think it's fair to say when a retailer goes into default, fails to make an interest payment or other obligation on a calendar date, that's a harbinger, that's almost 100% harbinger of a filing to follow. So I think we're going to see an enormous amount of breakage, not just from the folks we could speculate are hanging on by a fingertip going into this, but by the myriad of retailers who don't have the wherewithal or the resources or the reserves or the strategic capacity to come out, however out is defined when this thing is over.
Well, and I
Dan,
think everybody right now is waiting for Neiman's to file and Penny's to file, is just read the press, right? So will they really file this weekend or sometime in the next couple of weeks? I don't know, but certainly we all think they might file. And then when you look at the rest of them, my guess is Nordstrom survives, Macy's survives, Kohl's survives, and Dillard survives. But if I had to put those in order, I'd say Nordstrom's the most likely to survive and Macy's the least likely to survive of that group. But I think they all will survive and come out the other side. But they won't look like what they look like now.
Right.
Macy's already told us they're going to close 125 stores. Are they really going to open those stores when they come back? And aren't there another 25, 30, 40, 50, some number that they also now will decide, well, they're not going to be any good either? And even the companies like Kohl's that I didn't really think had a closing program, they could easily have 10% of their stores they decide not to reopen. So Deb, I just looked at your numbers this morning and you were showing about, I think it was 3,000 store closures for the year so far. Well, one day, not too far in the future, that number's going to go from 3,000 to 30,000 in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
You're going to be able to ramp that up immediately because everybody's going to announce what's not going to open. And that's going to happen either right about the time we start going back to work or before. My guess is before.
Yeah, because everyone's trying to work with the landlords and figure things out. Do you think, Jen, you brought up a really interesting point on Kohl's, because Kohl's is not in a mall, and they also have this image of being more of like a discount department store. They sell essentials. I mean, my thoughts were that, if they really wanted to, they could be selling, because baby is considered essential. They could figure out a way to sell that now if they want. But also not being in a mall, how does that affect them going forward? And is that a positive?
Well, I think it's a big positive. There's the off-mall part of the world, right? The Burlington stores, the TJ Maxx, everybody on that side, Ulta, who's over there across the street from the mall, they've all been doing better than the mall-based stores. That goes for Ross too, of course, they're over there as well. And they're going to continue to do better when we come out. But they were already doing better when we went in. So there's no reason to think they won't be doing better when we come out, and that the differential may get greater. I think it will get greater, because I've been saying since 2014 that by 2030, 50% of all non-bar, non-restaurant retail will be online. Now, if I'm right about that, all this was going to happen anyway. It's just happening one hell of a lot faster.
Well, those 700, 800, 900 B and C malls that have been hanging on by fingertips for the last few years are also going to be a highly endangered species, if you will. Whether it's defaults by the landlords or an overwhelming number of tenants who can't reopen, can't begin to pay rent. I think this is the sea change that we've all been witnessing in slow motion, now operating on a fast forward basis as soon as the economy begins to open up.
I agree. I told you the good news, bad news joke yesterday that I thought the good news is there are 278 great malls in America. The bad news is there's 1,000 malls.
Yeah.
Something's got to happen. And we've always had about 300 that we thought probably were at risk. Now it's got to be a bigger number than that because people are going to go back to the mall pretty slowly, I believe, just like I think they're going to go back to restaurants pretty slowly. I think they'll go back, but it will not be we open and they all come.
So for like 20
to D2C companies, just along the line, Mark, of, you talked about, some of the changes that we were seeing. What do you think happens? Because some of them are in niche markets right now that people aren't interested in buying. I have to say, it could be interesting coming out on the other side of this, where you had these ankle biters at a lot of them, department stores and whatnot, but the ankle biters either end up getting acquired or not existing.
Well, there's no question that this crisis is going to turbocharge the migration from brick and mortar to online. To Jan's projection of 50%, just think of the magnitude of that. It's currently at 15, 16, 17% general merchandise sales. The grocery business, which has been running at single digits, is going to see an enormous increase after this crisis is over, as people become not only more and more comfortable shopping for groceries and sundries online, but fear having to walk down the aisles of a supermarket for some period of time. So this is all the changes that have been occurring fast and slow. Now, I think we would agree, we can anticipate changes occurring at an incredible pace, probably in a very inconsistent way, because there are going to be retailers who will not be solvent on the other side of this, whose ability to get organized for a reopening is going to be challenged.
It's also worth mentioning, Amazon, Walmart, Target, Costco, the dollar stores, they were already all winning, right? Now they're the only game in town from the point of view of going to shop. People who didn't really shop those stores before are shopping those stores, both online and in store. They're going to retain some of that goodwill when they come out the other side. They're going to be even further ahead, not just because they're not going broke, but because they're going to actually gain share during this process. And they'll give some of that back as people have other alternatives on places to shop. Oh, Home Depot, I left them out. They're also in that category. So yeah, we're going to see a real change that's happening faster. The winners are going to win faster and the losers are going to lose faster than they were. And, we already knew that no product that went online from 1999 to now has ever lost market share back to brick and mortar. And no aspect of the socioeconomic spectrum, from boomers like me or the greatest generation than boomers like me, all the way down to Z's, not one group of them have ever bought less online the following year as a percent of sales than they did the year before. This is just going to accelerate that trend, but that was already all in place.
To your point about market share, during the 2008 recession, the dollar stores were absolutely seeing customers they'd never seen before. And following that recession, they kept a lot of those customers and retain them today.
Sure.
They also, coming out of that, some of them upscale their stores. So they, appealed to a much broader set of consumers. And that was also incredibly interesting. And Jan, to your point in terms of what we're seeing, because these retailers are opening and they're having to innovate, we're already seeing some amazing innovations coming out of the likes of Walmart and Target and Albertsons and Tractor Supply, because they're in the market and they have to in order to adapt to this environment. So I actually think what you bring up is the gap is even wider, because those who are, kind of asleep at the switch right now, outside of focusing on demand forecasting, there's not a lot that they're, working with.
Yeah, I left that out. I do think it's a good thing if you're Tractor Supply and you feel local. I think it's a good thing if you're Ollie's Bargain Barn because you also feel local and people like what you do. And I think it's good if you're Casey's General Store. So I think all of those kinds of companies are going to get more love and affection from their customers than they got before this all started. And they were already really good at what they do.
But that's actually incredibly important. One of my, something I really rely on in terms of their expertise stated to me yesterday that they feel this could be the rebirth of Main Street, small town America, if you will, but really those retailers who are, small boutiques, 1, 2s, 3s, because when we come back, we want to support them. Do you think there's any merit to that?
Well, MasterCard tells us every year for the last 6 years in a row that local businesses outgrew national businesses from the point of view of where people wanted to shop and did shop. So it's still a very small component of the business for any one of those. But yes, I absolutely think that we'll want to stay closer to home. We're not going to want to travel internationally for a while. We're not even going to want to fly any place. We're not going to go any place where people are that we don't know. We're going to be xenophobic, which means we're going to go, if you happen to live in Greenwich, Connecticut, like I do, to Greenwich Avenue rather than someplace else like the city to go do whatever you do. And you're going to go to your neighborhood restaurant when it reopens, not the Cheesecake Factory at the mall, because you want to be with people you know and you feel like I'm safe. And there's going to be a huge component of that. Nesting is going to be real. This is going to be good at Home Depot. Everybody's going to fix everything that's wrong with their house and put in all the safety systems because they want to feel safer. And right now, they don't feel safe.
Right.
I'll tell you one interesting thing that we've seen already in China, I just want to interject, is that right, a big push of many economies has been this outbound Chinese tourist. Well, right, China is up and running and they're traveling, but they're now traveling inside of China. And so there's this additional, I have an additional fear, which is especially if you're, a mall on one of the coasts and you've picked up a lot of these, tourists, if you're a real tourist market, there's an additional nail in the coffin in terms of what may be your future as a result of that.
Just heard a comment about that yesterday on Roosevelt Field. If you're not flying into JFK, there's a component of your business that's not showing up, even once you're all back in business.
It's going to be a very long time before the quote unquote tourist business returns to Roosevelt Field, Fifth Avenue, Union Square. I mean, it's almost unimaginable that international travel is going to open up as it was for at least a year and a half, 2 years, maybe even longer.
But
I do feel pretty good though about luxury right now coming back. It's already coming back in China. And even though I worry about the tourist component of luxury, I think the domestic part of luxury will come back pretty fast. I think those people have pent-up demand. Their assets really haven't been hurt very much unless the market goes down again from here. But we're up 30% off of the bottom here. We're not down that far from the top. And we're not seeing a cratering yet of house values or anything like that. Unless those things happen, that customer is going to come back immediately because they're going to want to have new stuff. Right. But other people are going to be much more concerned about putting bread on the table than they are buying a new sweater. So I'm really concerned about below luxury, the money all going someplace besides apparel, accessories, and things like that.
Well, we're already seeing a lot of innovation out of luxury, right? Dior just opened up a virtual boutique. We are seeing the luxury retailers, I would say innovate more than we would have expected in this environment. I mean, Marie, you spent a lot of time with luxury. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think luxury could be down 20-25% this year, and next year it's going to be hurting. I think the big strong luxury brands like Dior, Louis Vuitton, Chanel, they'll do fabulously. But I think your aspirational shopper is gone. Everyone's going to hurt because there's going to be less travel. And when you travel, you check out the flagships in any of the flagship cities. So if you love Chanel, you go to Chanel in Paris, you go to Chanel in London, you go to Chanel in New York, you see if there's different things. While a real luxury shopper has phone numbers into each of those outposts, we are going to be hurt because the luxury shopper is not traveling as much and you're losing the aspirational shopper.
Well, the luxury customer who has been disappointed to some degree about the reticence that these houses have had in presenting their assortments in full online, making their assortments available by way of pricing. I think that the luxury houses are going to drop that
Right.
that issue that they've had about diluting their brand equity or acting beneath their view of
Luxury standard.
of their reputation. I think they're going to go all in
Mhm.
on attempting to offset that lack of footsteps. They're probably also going to substantially amp up their already pronounced personal shopping services so that
And
they
the
can
good news is
reconnect with customers.
there's technology now that will enable a luxury experience online that wasn't there 2 years ago.
And the best technology people are LVMH and Kering. They'll be the first to get that done, and they'll be able to do that business online, in store, however they want to do it, and they will make that work for that luxury customer. And the luxury customer will be glad they did, which is different than what we thought 6 weeks ago.
But I haven't been worried about luxury because almost 2/3 of total luxury is done by the Chinese consumer. So of that 2/3, about a third is bought domestically, a third is bought by the outbound Chinese tourist, and then another third is being brought in by the Daigos. Daigo business is as good as ever. And that tourist, once again, now they're buying domestically. So if you can keep, let's say, the majority of 2/3 of your sales, and you have to pick up some of it in other markets, and Mark and Jan, as you talked about, if they're going online and being more innovative, I think those companies come out of this somewhat unscathed. And we also, I think we're reassessing kind of what we purchase, why we purchase it, what has value to us. And if these items have a different value, right, whether it's their second life or the circular economy, I think this market comes out very differently. I want to go over our poll results quickly. And Jan, of course, as usual, you were spot on. Most of those who answer the polls believe that Nordstrom's will be the winner on the other side of this, with Kohl's in the #2 poll position. And then this is an interesting response that we may want to discuss. When do you expect non-essential retailers will reopen? June. Do you think June is too optimistic, Mark?
Yeah, I think it's going to happen in North Dakota or
I'm with you.
or Arkansas. Whether it happens smoothly or it's the harbinger of yet another crisis in those locations, we just don't know. But as far as mainstream retail across the country, I think June is a bit of a dream. I think we're looking at openings which begin in June, run through the summer, and then we have to hope and pray this doesn't assert itself in September, as some of the medical experts have hypothesized. So there isn't an opening day, there isn't an opening bell, and
Too
to
bad.
Jan's point earlier, it could take a long time for customers to believe that it's safe. Just because stores say they're open doesn't mean they're actually going to begin to do business.
But I do believe discretionary retail will start opening at the end of May and open all through June in progressive pieces. And in most parts of the country, by the end of June, I believe we'll see most of discretionary reopen. The question is how? How many people can come in the store? How far apart do they have to stand? What does your associate have to wear? How much cleaning do you have to do? How does it feel to the customer that they've got to be wanded or gunned at the door so that they don't have a temperature? And how much is that going to cost as far as additional expense to make that store work that way, on top of the fact that your sales are 50% of what they were when you went in? So it's going to be a real problem on the top line, but boy, it's going to be a real problem on the expense line.
Well, I've heard that they're even talking about sanitizing the dressing rooms. And so
yeah, who wants to try on something if somebody else had on? Nobody.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
it's really interesting. Right. And then the last question on our poll, when do you expect spending to return to pre-COVID-19 levels? I personally think this is bullish. First half of 2021 and second half of 2021 tied. Mark?
I don't think we're going to be able to see any indication of normalcy until 2022. I think that this crisis has an 18-month to 2-year run, not only by virtue of when will stores open, when will jobs be restored, but how will retailers reassert themselves, reset their assortments, reset their portfolio of brick and mortar stores, accommodate technology in a more aggressive way to be able to do more business online. So I think we'd all like to see this over and done in a short period of time. I think it's going to take a much longer time. Now consider the normal buying cycle, which is 9 to 12 months for many retailers. It's now going to be 2x that, just because everybody's been in this extended state of pause.
We got to talk about that for a second, because I think you make a good point. This summer, assuming we are reopened, is going to be a disaster from the point of view of discounting, right? Because nothing in the store is fresh. Everything is old. You have to open at 50% off, and you have to go to 75% off pretty fast. That's not good if you're an off-price store, right? Because everybody else is now off-price, at least as deep as you are. So that's going to go on for 3 months. And then we're going to get to fall, and nobody's going to have any product, because nobody ordered any product. The off-price guys didn't order it, neither did the full-price guys. There won't be anything available that really is what you want to have available. It's only the stuff you couldn't get out of buying. And so they'll all be scrambling to get that in, but that's going to be pretty ugly as well. So I've said normalcy comes in about 9 quarters. That's a long time. But we should see increasing sales every quarter. And the question is, who can survive when you're at 50, then 60, then 70, then 80, then 90, and finally back to 100% of pre-COVID levels, if it takes that long. So I'm relatively optimistic that the consumer starts to come back, and comes back progressively so that it's better all the time. And unemployment goes down steadily for the next 9 quarters, and sales rise for the next 9 quarters. But you still got to get back to pre-COVID levels for the retailers to be, quote, successful.
So what's both, I'm going to ask one last question, and then we're going to do rapid fire on the Q&A from the audience, because there's many of them. What's your prediction for holiday? I mean, we're hearing people are ordering as low as 50% right now, with the idea they can chase up to 65% of 2019 volumes. How is that consistent or inconsistent with what both of you are hearing, and what's your prediction?
I think you're talking to the same people I am. That's what I think.
Well, consider the challenge of issuing out open to buy to merchant groups with regard to holiday inventory. I mean, it all hinges upon some assumption of sales. Who can know how to plan sales when in fact we really don't know when the stores are going to reopen, and we really don't know what the customer's response is going to be. So it necessitates enormous conservatism, which is to say we're going to go from shelves that are bursting when stores reopen to shelves that are going to be substantially empty this coming holiday. And then we'll go through the same loopy cycle, I think, in the first and second quarters of 2021 as organizations recalibrate their dials, if you will.
Gee, Deb, we can't plan a shift in the calendar. What hope do we have of planning something we've never seen before in our whole lifetimes in retailing, including me? And I've been in retailing 50 years. I've never seen any of this stuff. I've been in more than 50 years. I've never seen anything like this. No one's ever seen anything like this. No buyer's ever seen it. No senior manager has ever seen it. No CEO has ever seen it. Nobody's ever seen what the government just did as far as putting money in. There is just anybody that tells you they have a clue of what really is going to happen on the other side is just making it up, which is what I'm doing. People pay me to make it up. But nobody knows this, I'm telling you. This has never been seen before. I can see what the problems are going to be. I can understand how hard it's going to be to get the merchandise where you want it at the right time. But I sure can't tell you who's going to be able to do it. Walmart's going to be able to do it. Target's going to be able to do it. They didn't even slow down. They're going to have clearance because they've got merchandise nobody's buying now too. But they've been in business the whole time. All these other people are starting out with a store full of stuff that's 3 months old.
So Mark, I want to ask you a question. We're hearing from many retailers, right, in this big move to sustainability, which Maria has been very focused on, that they're going to pack away for next year. And I'm hearing this, I think 100% of people I've spoken to, because they don't want this huge kind of discounting environment. What do you think that looks like? And do you think that that's possible?
I have to laugh because this is an old May Company tactic.
I know it well.
You know, it's now referred to as hoteling. I don't think it was called that back in the day, but at the end of the day, retailers who have the cash capacity to consider packing up goods and holding it until next spring may very well profit from that. But many, many retailers aren't going to have the luxury of that. They're going to need to turn this inventory that's sitting into cash to be able to reopen their enterprises. Yeah, nobody wants to start discounting at 50, 60, 70 off right out of the gate. Go try to figure out how to bring your customer back to some normal level of discount, 30 and 40 off. So it's going to be a very, it's a Hobbesian choice that's going to have to be made. I think that there's probably going to be some mixed strategies. Put some things on the shelf in the back room and wait, and get rid of other things that we believe will be unappealing in 6 to 9 months. At the end of the day, this is going to be, to Jan's point, a free-for-all that no one has ever witnessed before. And to Jan's point, I have to laugh. Just figuring out what the Easter shift means on a year-over-year basis, or what happens when the Thanksgiving to Christmas interval changes by a day or two,
Right.
has been an insurmountable challenge. So I think people will be pulling out Ouija boards, or just using dice,
Yeah.
or consulting with an astrologer or a psychic, or just forging a path which is entirely based on expediency, which is probably based on cash.
Yes,
All right, so
and
we're
they're
gonna
going
do
to be very conservative in their planning. But I'm telling you, Neiman's, Saks, Nordstrom's, Macy's, Kohl's, Penny's ain't packing this stuff away because they need the cash flow, and they're going to sell it at some price to somebody. And that's just the list I was looking at. There's a much longer list that aren't going to pack away either. Most of the malls, most of the guys inside the mall, you can't pack away. They've got to sell it all. They have to pay bills.
All right, we're gonna rapid fire. Marie and I will go every other question, but we literally have about 50 questions in the queue, so we'll get through what we can. All right, Coresight has mentioned that China retail has come back strong. Can we use that as a model for US retail comeback? Why or why not? Fast.
We can't use it as a model because it's a totally different environment. What have they got per square foot per capita over there? 2. We've got 25. It's totally different customer. I don't think there's any model anywhere in the world that we can look at and say, this is the way the United States will open back up. We know we've got Iceland open. We know we've got Germany open. We know Sweden never closed down. We know all of those things. We can look at every one of those sets of retailers, and it won't tell you a damn thing about what's going to happen here, and neither will China. This is all going to be created from the ground up.
I think you're right. I think it's wishful thinking.
Okay, here's a quick question. Which returns quicker, enterprise businesses or small businesses?
Oh,
Big
look,
ones come
small
back.
businesses, the big ones who have cash capacity are going to come back as fast as the government allows them to reopen. Small businesses are going to limp along. It's going to be a very inconsistent outcome in that regard.
Well, they're also going to go broke at a much higher rate than the big businesses, and the big businesses are going to go broke.
Yeah.
So you're going to see there'll be 100,000 restaurants not reopen out of the 680,000 we've got, and they'll never reopen. There'll be all kinds of small retailers that never reopen. They don't have any excess cash. If they got money out of the PPP, maybe they can survive a little while longer, but when they reopen and it turns out their business is 50% of norm, they're still going to go broke in 3 months. That's going to be a lot of dead small retailers out there.
Right.
Have you heard from any retailers or mall operators, their plans or policies to make re-entry into their stores or malls?
The only thing that I've seen written about is Singapore is promoting certification of hotels and resorts, providing some sort of governmental imprimatur, which will assure customers that they're safe. I think that some kind of a surety ought to emerge, either from industry or government or some combination of the two, which hopefully will be meaningful as opposed to just a Band-Aid.
I haven't heard much about how they're going to do it from that point of view. Everybody's talked about we have to make it feel safer, we have to check temperatures, all that sort of stuff. But I can tell you, I'm going to put an app on my phone that says I've already had it or whatever, so that I can just flash through whatever checkpoints there are, because we're going to need something like that. because we're going to find out that 20 million people have already had it, right?
Okay, so what will physical stores look like in the future of a mall?
No people, lots of robots,
What will be their purpose?
smaller,
Like, what's the purpose
no
of a
inventory.
physical store?
Pardon?
What's the purpose of a physical store with the movement online?
They're going to be showrooms.
Okay.
We're going to see a lot more smaller retailers. This was going to happen either way. We're going to see a lot more automation. We're going to see a lot friendlier, more personalization. This small store that Nordstrom does, the 1,500 square foot store, you're going to see a lot of that kind of stuff where you're supporting a bigger store or you're supporting the online business. That's going to happen. And you're going to see that happen in a lot of the malls, right? You can do it in 500 square feet or 1,000 square feet instead of 3,500 square feet. And you can make sure the inventory gets to you same day or next day anyway from someplace else. So you can just have it be more of a showroom and be nice and friendly and still have a lot of automated systems. I said robotics, but things that make the technology that makes it easier and you need less people. But the people there need to be the friendly, touchy-feely, we're making you happy kind of people.
Well, dark, dingy, dirty, poorly inventoried, poorly staffed stores, of which there are tens of thousands today, aren't going to reopen. And if they do, they're not going to stay open for very long.
Right. Will new businesses open to take advantage of vacant retail spaces?
Well, there's going to be an enormous amount of space. The question is, how much can the landlords afford to give away? Because there isn't going to be an enormous amount of liquidity. So I suspect this pop-up phenomenon that we've seen expanded year over year is going to become heroic. But sorry to say, I think a lot of it's going to be much ado about nothing.
And maybe I'm also going to ask for, percentage rent only on anything I'm working with anybody on, because who knows what's really going to happen out there. And the landlords are going to need people in the space. So I think you'll see a lot of people try a lot of new concepts. Some of them will work. Mark's right. Most of them won't. They'll just go broke. But people are always have a new idea in retailing. We will see lots of new ideas that are combination online and pop-up and in-mall.
So what's your projection for second tier brands and those brands that are actually on their second go round?
The third time is not going to be the charm. What can I say? I hate to sound so pessimistic, but the fact is that folks who haven't made it going into this crisis are entirely unlikely to pull off any kind of success coming out unless they can fundamentally change their assortments and they've got some deep-pocketed investors who will backstop them.
I was searching for those words. That was great. Exactly.
Your thoughts on Amazon stepping into brick and mortar?
More. Why not? They've already got Whole Foods. They need more locations. They probably need in total 2,000 locations nationwide. They've only got, 300 and change. And they'll figure out a way to do it either themselves because there'll be plenty of space, or they'll be able to buy something cheap. But yeah, they need to compete with Walmart more on Walmart's terms on that side of their business. And they're going to want to have brick and mortar to do that. They're going to want to have drive-through pickup and pick up in store and all the stuff that a retailer can do. And Walmart's going to do the same thing going the other way. They're going to be much more aggressive online and do as much as they can online. And they'll have every store set up for drive-through pickup eventually. And those two are going to have to just duke it out for the endless aisle part of the business. So yeah, I can't imagine Amazon's not going to wind up with 2,000, 2,200 stores nationwide. They could probably do it with 1,100 to 1,500, but they're going to need brick and mortar, and everybody that's going to compete in this business is going to need some brick and mortar space. Doesn't have to be that big, maybe, but they need space.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if they actually go into the 2,000 to 3,000 or 4,000 points of contact via Amazon Go, because there are a significant number of customers who can't receive Amazon packages conveniently or safely.
Mm-hmm.
There are also a significant number of customers who are not able to transact via e-commerce because they can't use or don't use credit instruments. They can't use credit cards because they don't have them, or they don't want to use them. We're going to see Amazon, I think, pursuing the old Montgomery Ward, Sears Roebuck catalog desk strategy where customers can go to their local location, pick up an order, and pay for it on the spot in cash if they desire.
And
So
you know,
I
Mark doesn't agree with me on this, but I say all the time, they ought to just buy Kohl's. They'll get 1,100 stores that are in the right markets and the right places. They can use part of the store for store and part of the store for distribution. They'll be more competitive with Walmart. They should just pick them up. But if they don't do that, they're going to have to do what he just said, build out their own. And I'm not a big fan of the Go store, but I think they'll finally figure it out because they're really good at what they do. But you know, as I say all the time, right now, Amazon's a terrible brick and mortar retailer. They got a long way to go to be a brick and mortar retailer, but they could get there a lot faster by buying something.
So I have a question. Will brand loyalty be permanently impacted by COVID as consumers are now purchasing what's available regardless of the brand?
No, just the opposite. Brands, brands, brands. If you know it, you remember it, you trust it, you feel safe. Frou-frou new brands, don't go there. Clorox, you know, things that you know, brands you know, they are going to be so popular coming out of this thing because they feel safe and trusted. It's going to be the first time that traditional brands have had a shot against the new cool brands. And that's where we're going to be for the whole time Mark thinks it takes for recovery. If he thinks it's 2 years or 4 years, but it's going to be a long time.
agree.
Do you? We
Yeah.
didn't have that discussion. So you think that same thing is going to happen? I do.
I think the fallback to things that are reliable and proven is going to be only limited by availability of inventory.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I think too.
I mean, we're hearing a lot on the technology side, right? Demand forecasting, assortment or optimization, you know, really kind of retailers getting back to their roots in terms of having the right product on the shelves and making sure it's there. So I couldn't agree with you more.
Oh, and
Right.
we're going to have to get to something like RFID or something.
Yeah.
Some way that we can identify every unit, where it is, what it's doing. I thought we would be there long before now. We haven't gotten there yet, but that kind of thing has to happen. Either there has to be visual identification or it has to be RFID tag or something that works to get every item identified and where it is and to you, so you can have a lot less in the store and still have availability.
But Jan, to that point, I think it's incredibly important because if you're doing curbside pickup, right, and the person's ordering 2 hours before they're arriving, you need to know if you have it in the store. And
Yeah.
so, right, because you don't want to disappoint. Right now, I think loyalty is one of the most important things. I couldn't agree with you more, right? How much will it make sense for retail? This is a good question. Retailers to reopen if they can only achieve 50% of customer traffic and presumably sales. The four-wall contribution model can barely support sales declines of 10 to 15%, let alone 40 to 50.
We
Well, this
already
is-
answered that. It's going to be a big problem.
Yeah, this is why there's going to be an unbelievable amount of breakage. I'm not a geologist by any means, but they talk about the planet Earth having gone through 5 extinctions, and people have hypothesized that climate change is posing a 6th extinction. Well, from a retail perspective, this pandemic is an extinction. It's going to fundamentally wipe out all of the retail enterprises that were limping along, hanging on by a fingertip, or doing more talking than doing. And the market share is going to shift massively to the folks who are organized well enough to take advantage of whatever comes out on the other side of this.
I'm adopting that. It's going to look just like that model when you see it, and all the species get to this mark and this little bitty line comes out the other side. I believe you're right on that.
Yeah, it's a very good way to put it, Mark. I mean, and it's interesting, right? Everyone's trying to figure out, you know, what does holiday look like and how much reopens and, you know, kind of getting back in business. But I think there's those who get back in business, and I think extinction, right? They're not even going to kind of dribble along as they have. It's just, this is their like kind of day of reckoning, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, if you're at 50% of sales, you can fail pretty fast. You just can't sustain the cost structure. Yes, you can have a lot less people on the floor, but then it's hard to serve the customer. And you can have a lot less inventory in the store, but then it's hard to serve the customer unless you improved your methodology on running the business. And I don't think anybody that's not been in business for the last 8 weeks is basically improving the way they're going to run it on the other side. They're just trying to figure out how to stay alive.
Well, you've also got the remediation issue of catching up on your rent, even if it's in some form of negotiation, paying for the goods you've avoided paying for. rehiring staff who may have to be convinced to come back with a higher comp. This is going to be a real workout for virtually everybody who's in business today.
So another brand question is, do you think we'll see channel migration of brands? E.g., will better department store brands look to go into stores like a Kohl's or a Target?
Well, I think brands are going to go wherever they think they're going to get paid
Okay.
and where customers are going to see their goods. I think the distinction is going to become increasingly less important.
Mhm.
It's all about end-to-end, brand to consumer, and the imaging and the reputation and the integrity and all of that sort of stuff is going to be less important.
That was a trend that had already started, right? We never saw Estee Lauder in a place like Ulta back in the day. They would have only been in a prestige department store.
Right.
So that kind of stuff already started, and it will just accelerate because there'll be, if Neiman's really goes away, for instance, and they really do file, and they're not going to reopen in their current form, all those brands have to go someplace. Nordstrom's is an obvious choice because it's the next closest thing, right?
Mhm.
But you're going to see brands going all over, just like Mark said, in order to find out where that niche is that works for them. We're also going to see, I mean, let's pretend that, what about Belks and Boscov's and Steinmart and Stage and all of those smaller kind of players? A lot of those could all just be gone, right? There are brands in all of those locations. They're going to have to go someplace. They're not going to want to sell less goods. If Macy's is a survivor, everybody has to go to Macy's. But if the upper end survivor is Nordstrom's, all the high end brands have to go to Nordstrom's. On the other hand, they do sell everything online, and they're going to sell a lot more online. We were just talking about that.
I also think a lot of brands who've been reticent to have anything to do with Amazon are going to be changing their tune in a hurry because Amazon has A, got the customer,
Mhm.
and B, has the cash or the cash flow.
Yes.
And isn't there the drop ship marketplace feature of Saks Fifth Avenue, Walmart, like all the retailers have that functionality now? In
Yeah,
terms
that would be better.
Okay,
of,
how do you think customer sentiment will change demand? If 40 million people are on unemployment, what will happen to retail?
That's easy. It'll go to hell in a handbasket.
The next closest analog is the Great Depression in the 30s, and pretty much retail outside of essentials went completely to hell, to Jan's point. It was on a multi-year pause, and then of course World War II rekindled the economy, but it certainly didn't rekindle the retail economy. At the end of the day, that's why I keep coming back to the fact that this is a 2022 recovery, maybe at best. And when we're able to say we are now recovered, what we're going to be talking about is entirely different from what we're looking at 3 months ago.
I'd like to add, I don't think we're going to have 40 million unemployed people. But if you assume that, well, retail's dead.
so we've had a few questions. What do you think will happen to rental and resale models?
I've been debating that ever since this started. Rental and resale is an interesting business, and I think it's a business we will have going forward in the future. But none of those are really making any money, and things that aren't making money are really going to struggle coming out the other side of this thing because I don't think the cost of capital is going to be zero anymore. I think online only people who don't make money are going to have a problem staying around because cost of capital is going to go up. When the cost of capital went up for WeWork, what did we find out? That WeWork couldn't survive. So I'm really concerned from that point of view. I think longer term, rental and resale is where the customer wants to be. I think it's going to grow like crazy, but I think there could be some real attrition in this business coming out the other side of this.
Well, I think the people we know are all likely to go away and maybe reemerge after the fact with new capitalization. Because to your point, I don't think anybody's made any money in this business, and anyone is any closer to making money than otherwise. This crisis is certainly not going to aid and abet their affiliation with customers. I mean, who is interested in buying used clothing today? I guess if you're desperate, but I think people will look back to their own wardrobes and buy sewing needles and thread before they start wearing someone else's clothes.
I also think that, and I've thought this all along, those companies that aren't making money but are building this business and creating the demand, that demand is going to be there going forward, even if it's not right now, just like Mark said. But the people who should be doing that, LVMH should be running the resale of LVMH, not some third party. And Kering should be running the resale of Gucci, not some third party. And Ralph Lauren should be running the resale of Ralph Lauren, not some third party. And those are the people that are going to have the money to do it going forward, and they know it works, and they know there's a marketplace for it, and they can authenticate better than anybody else can. That's got to be where this thing goes at some point in time.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of questions on the future of the mall. I'm going to try and aggregate a few of them together. So there's questions about, fitness activities in malls. And since so many of us have moved our workouts to our home, what does the future of that look like? And, how do the relationships between the landlords and the tenants change? And, is there an opportunity for them to benefit from this entire event, if you will?
The only place more dangerous for catching coronavirus at the moment than a brothel is a workout facility. Coming back.
I may have to quote you on that, Jan. I think we should tweet that. That's
A brothel.
It ain't coming back very fast. Everybody's going to buy a Peloton and put it in their house if they can, or they're going to buy something from Bowflex and put it in their house, and they're going to take online classes and they're going to do that stuff. But going back to the typical gym is going to be a real slow process, because you're there for an hour or more with people that if you don't know, they don't have it. You can certainly walk out with it. And I just don't see that coming back at any pace in the next year and a half. I don't see how it can. It's one of the places I think is the scariest.
Well, to the question you asked about relationships between mall owners and their tenants, I can't imagine anybody signing a lease anytime in the mid to longer term that's not a pure percentage rent deal, where the risk is shared. We do business, you benefit. We don't do business, you're out of luck. How can anybody do a pro forma on a 5, 10, 15-year lease, at least for the next few years, and make sense of it? So there's going to be an enormous amount of tension between landlords and tenants as they reconcile rent bills unpaid and forward obligations. And of course, this also will hasten the demise of those 8, 9, 1,000 B and C malls that are still theoretically open or will be open for business in the next few months.
right.
So do you see what we're currently going through as a call for investment into technologies such as AI, big data, to better plan for the future and in an effective way?
Sure.
Well, I think it's a call to action, but there's so much out there in the technology space that's purely either speculative or hypothetical. I think people need real technology solutions that can be installed and deliver results promptly as opposed to speculatively. So there's going to be an enormous amount of activity in tech, but a lot of it is just sort of interesting kind of stuff. I think the real players who've been in business for a while, for example, like First Insight, will have a real leg up on gauging customer sentiment and providing retailers and brands with real actionable data.
I agree with all that. You're going to need Retail Next and First Insight and Zebra Technologies and all those people that have been around and been doing the technology forever. They're going to be in demand, because if you're going to operate at 50% or 75% or 80% of norm, and it doesn't look like it's coming back soon inside the store, you've got to get it to work better. You've got to get the store to work better, not just your online business.
Yeah, and to that point, I think you're also going to need technology that doesn't take 18 months to implement, right? It's got to be these quick wins, or these retailers, won't necessarily be here 18 months out. So I think that that's also a very strong message to convey to the technology companies, is not only partnership with retail, but also secondly, this ability to implement quickly and to have full support. A lot of questions around payments, cashless, contactless payments, that's obviously been something many have tried and are still trying, but does that become even more important, right? Do you want to really touch money that somebody else has touched, that type of thing?
Money goes away. We knew it was eventually going to happen. Nobody wants to pass money back and forth, and nobody wants to punch a pen pad. So yes, I think it's all coming very quickly now. I just had that experience at a place that I had to go buy something at in the last 2 weeks, and they had walled off the person you were paying, and the machine was out front, and you just stuck your card, pulled it out. You didn't sign anything, you didn't touch anything, and even that made me nervous.
Well, I don't disagree, but think of the enormous percentage of customers, for instance, Walmart customers, who continue to pay cash because that's the only currency, that's the only vehicle they have with which to transact. So, you know, it's really sexy to think that we go completely cashless, but there's a segment of the population that just can't go there.
Yeah.
Right, but we could have a machine you fed that cash into rather than handing it to.
That's true.
And we're going to have to do something like that. And then you're just going to want to push down the percentage that comes in cash. And, you know, what are we down to now? It's like 18% comes in cash now, something like that. But at Walmart, you're right. Those places, it's higher than it is other places. But we're going to have to get to the point that most of those transactions occur on your phone.
So I'm going to leave the last question to Marie. For those of you whose questions we weren't able to answer, we still have actually 42 in the queue. So I think we'll have to bring Mark and Jan back. And I want to thank you guys very much. This was amazing. So Marie, we're going to let you close it out.
Okay, there are really so many questions left here, and a lot of them are good. You guys are great. So what do you think about the layoffs that Nordstrom's did in the beginning, and projecting the most minimal losses, especially considering that their competitors are worse off, Macy's that did furloughs?
I think everybody should have done furloughs.
Right.
Conserve cash. Everybody should cut their dividend. Everybody should eliminate any sort of buybacks.
Right.
And nobody basically, well, nobody. Some people did pay their rent April 1st. Nobody's going to pay their rent May 1st if they're not back open. So, you know, they're conserving cash, and nobody's paying their vendors until they have to. That's just survivability. You can't survive on zero inbound cash flow when you have outbound cash flow, and they have to do all those things. Once they're back in business, they'll still have to catch up. But, you know, if you go bankrupt, you never have to catch up.
I think for the first few weeks of this crisis, there was a lot of wishful thinking in the air. There was a tremendous reticence to pull the furlough cord or punch the layoff button. At the end of the day, it did take a few weeks for virtually everyone to realize that this Easter Sunday reopening date was a pipe dream, and that the uncertainty is just so massive that you just have to get into the bunker and treat cash as the lifeblood of your business if you're going to have a business when this thing is over.
Yeah, you want to treat your employees well, right? You don't want to furlough them. But if you're not there when you reopen, you can't employ them either. So this is just survival 101, retail survival 101. And I've been saying that to any clients I've talked to. You just have to hang on to every dollar of cash you can hang on to until you have a way out the other side. And then you can start planning how many people you bring back, how much can I carry forward, who can I pay when. But initially, right now, you're just going to have to sit on the money and hope that you've got enough to last the 3, 4, 5 months, 8 months, whatever it is that it takes to get cash flow coming back in the door that's enough to.
Deborah, our early conversations about a month ago were cut everything.
It was cut, actually, and it was one of the questions, right? I mean, the first thing everyone did was cut marketing, furlough their CMOs, CDOs, and not pay rent, furlough employees, and really just think about, right, massive chunks of, you know, you can't have cash out and no cash in. It's right. This is just math. And I do think people were reticent, you know, to do that. It's heartbreaking, right, to furlough employees and to think about the outcome. But there were definitely companies that acted very quickly. So with that, I'm going to sign off. Thank you guys. Jan and Mark, we look forward to having you back. This was fantastic. Marie, thank you very much. And thanks everyone for tuning in.